introducing the edge tackle range of line. So Richard, we basically started with a blank piece of paper, didn't we?
We did.
And this was to develop all the different types of lines that we wanted to cover 99% of your coarse fishing application. And we spent quite a lot of time, haven't we? Probably over a year.
Just over a year
and
developing this.
Richard's got a lot of experience, probably, I don't want to embarrass you, but over 30 years of developing lines for the tackle trade. So we couldn't have really got a better guy to do it. Tell us a bit about the development process, your thinking on the lines.
Well, what we've done, we've actually gone to a specialist fishing line manufacturer as opposed to someone that makes nylon for another industry.
Yeah.
So this is what they do. And then what we've also done is made sure that we've got the raw materials from the best Japanese supplier of the polymer and one of the best European suppliers of the polymer for the line specialist to extrude.
Yeah, so we've used all this vast experience to basically come up with the very best performing line, the best quality line for the different attributes that we want, because you can't really make one line for everything, can you?
No, so what we've done, we've gone for example, everything from say an 07 hook length line if you're fishing squat, bloodworm on a canal, all the way through various ranges, right up to something like a 15-pound specimen line if you're carp fishing, and everything in between.
So we've basically got 5 families within our group of lines, and we can apply the different attributes to those lines and get the very best out of them that we can.
Yeah, literally it's horses for courses. Every line's got a job and that's the job it does.
Well, we're obviously going to look at these different lines in detail and explain all about them. But I mentioned your experience, and I don't again want to embarrass you, but you're a bit of a geek really, aren't you, when it comes to detail and getting everything absolutely right. And one thing just to talk about in general when we're looking at the lines is the spools. So you've given a lot of thought about the spools. Perhaps you could just explain a bit about that.
It's different spool sizes for different types of lines. So, exactly. On something like a hook length line, it's a small diameter. So you're going to get more of these in your tackle box, tackle bag, whichever it happens to be. But also, we haven't gone too narrow, because you could probably get a spool that's half the width of that.
Yeah.
But then you get more coils one on top of the other.
Yeah. So what you're doing there is you're sort of maximising the packaging to give the best quality line possible.
So that when the customer buys it and uses it, the line is in the best condition that they could get. So something like that, it's perfect for all the low diameters.
So we'd use that on our sort of premium hook length, rig line, and also the fluorocarbon.
Absolutely.
Then moving on to the real lines, you've got different spools for the different lengths of line that we sell.
Yeah, so if you've got 100 metres, you would deliberately make it much bigger in diameter, then you get less coils per 100 metres if you like. Otherwise, if you were to put 100 metres on a small spool, you get twice as many coils.
And that could probably have some kind of impact on the memory of the line as well, couldn't it, if it was tightly coiled?
If you did it tight as well, in terms of winding, it would be like a spring when it came off, and you don't want that.
No.
So you end up with a bigger spool for 100 metres.
Yeah.
But then, because we do lines in 300 metres as well as 100 metres for the reel, we've still got the same diameter, but it's a much deeper spool. So you still haven't got the coils laying one on top of the other so much.
Yeah.
And again, when you go from this size up to a specimen line,
which is 600 metres,
we've put an even bigger diameter spool. So again, you're trying to keep the number of coils down.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, Rich, it's this attention to detail that I really love, and it's something that I've learnt about because it's something I wouldn't even have considered. So we've got the right diameter spool, the right size spool. You've also got some lovely details like the line clips for people that want to use a line clip, because essentially some of these lines are like a bolt line, so you're not going to be using it all at once.
No, although on a hook length, when you're tying them on the bank, you do need a line clip.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that will come off in your tackle box.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've also got the sleeves on there as well, which, why would you put a sleeve on as well as a line clip?
Some people would want to use the sleeve, or C-clip if you want to call it that, as opposed to a line clip, because especially with this clear example you've got there, some people might find that a little bit fiddly putting the line in the clip. I find the clip that much easier. It's just to stop it unravelling.
So it's easy to use though, it's easy to take off and put back on again. And another job of that is it does protect the line in transit, doesn't it? So we're trying to protect the line, and that's the case with the outer box. which is UV resistant.
Absolutely.
And that's just making sure that we get the line from the manufacturer to the consumer in perfect condition.
Absolutely.
I don't want to labour on it, but I think it's a really neat point, because for me, I want my line to be the best quality in the best condition possible, because the line is the most fundamental thing when you're fishing, I think. Line and hooks.
You've got to keep it dry, you've got to keep it clean, you've got to try and keep it out of the light, and actually your line will last a lot longer than you think. If you're using a big spool and putting some on a reel and putting the rest away, you want to keep it in the best condition.
Well, I've got to tell you, I've absolutely loved the process of developing these lines with you. I've had great results with them. I think it's an absolutely awesome range, very comprehensive. Let's have a look at the different lines now in the different families.
Okay.
So the Edge Tackle Float Mono basically says what it is on the tin. This is a line that we've developed fundamentally for float fishing. Absolutely beautiful line. Tell us a little bit about the attributes about the Float Mono, Richard.
Well, the thing about this is everybody has to bear in mind that nylon's heavier than water and nylon wants to sink.
Yeah.
So ultimately nylon should sink, but what you can do is by playing around with the surface and the treatments that you put onto the line, you can actually help it to hold up in the surface tension, so it will float longer than other lines.
Yeah.
Because of its treatment.
Yeah, and I mean fundamentally this is a real line. I've been using it over the last season for all my river float fishing. We've got breaking strains from £3 up to £8. I particularly like the 3 and 4 pound. That's what I tend to use most with my style of match fishing. So when I'm fishing on rivers like the Wye and the Severn, where I'm using sort of 3 and 4 pound lines, catching a lot of fish hopefully, the line itself has proved to be very, very robust. So it's not only smooth, so for casting it's beautiful, it's very supple. You know, it comes off the spool very nicely, so I can fish with smaller floats if I need. Obviously it floats very well, but for me, I love the fact that it's robust.
It's a very soft, very supple line, which means it's going to peel off the reel perfectly, especially when you're fishing the stick float.
Yeah.
It's still durable, even though it's soft. But one of the things that really helps it is the way that the line is wound on the spool in the first place.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a good point actually. We haven't mentioned it, but nearly all of the line on our spools is wound linear, isn't it?
yeah, it's parallel winding or level winding.
Yeah.
So what you get is on our spools, every coil of line is one next to the other.
Yeah, we can see that really nicely on that.
And they're not laid over. Whereas if you get a normal spool, if you like, you can see how the coils of line are random.
Yeah.
So they're all going one across the other. And when that comes off, it's only a subtle thing, but you can feel the slight ripples where it's been slightly compressed. Whereas because every coil of our line is one next to the other, you don't get that.
Well, it's a really neat feature on all the line, and again it's just maximising the performance straight off the spool and onto your reel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we've produced an absolutely brilliant floating line. I mentioned it's from £3 up to £8. We've got 5 different breaking strains and diameters. The breaking strain is very, very strong in comparison to the diameter, and as with all our lines, we're very confident about the accuracy of the diameter of our line.
Yeah, we've tried really, really hard to get the diameters as accurate as you reasonably can.
Sure. So that's really good. So that's our Edge Tackle Float Mono, available in 100 and 300 metre spools.
Yeah, exactly, because the 100 metres for a lot of people is one spool, one reel. Whereas the 300 metre is quite useful because you could get 300 metre spools.
Yeah.
Or if you're still fishing with a close face reel, you could probably get 4 spools because you won't want to put 100 metres on a close face spool.
Absolutely. I've been getting 3 spools off one spool of 300 metres. I think that's absolutely perfect. On my reels, that's around about 110 turns.
Right.
So what I'll do when I'm spooling it up is I'll count the turns.
And you know where you are.
So I know where I am, and that works out really well. So we're getting great value as well.
Yes.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. Edge tackle premium mono. This is quite a big range of lines, isn't it, Richard?
There's a dozen sizes in this,
Yeah.
and in multiple lengths.
Yeah, so we've got the smaller diameters in 50 metre spools, and then when we get to the 015 diameter and above, we've got 100 metre and 300 metre
Yep.
spools. So wow, what a fantastic range this is. This is your sort of top quality rig line, hook length line, for use when you're match fishing typically. One thing to say that's so important to me is that the diameter is absolutely bang on.
Again, it's as accurate as we can make it,
Yeah.
bearing in mind that it's nylon.
But it's, you know, we've been very, very honest about that. So the breaking strain to the diameter is very, very good, as you'd expect from a premium mono like this. I've been using this for a year now on all my pole rigs and all my hook lengths where I'm fishing with, basically on the float. So I love the fact that it's very, very accurate. It's very, very supple. I like the fact that it's a clear line. Tell us a bit about that, Richard.
Well, the thing is, this is the softest, most supple of the lines that we do, and we've deliberately not put any pigment in it because we didn't want it to be slightly harder, slightly stiffer. We want it to be as soft and as strong as possible.
Yeah.
That's why it's clear.
Yeah, and I mean, with my match fishing, I do go down to the 075 hook length, so the finest diameter, and for me, that's really, really important. So in the lowest diameters, this is what I'm typically using for my hook length material, and I'm convinced that gets me more bites.
That's because you're fishing the Warwickshire Raven and it's hard.
A lot of the time, yeah, a lot of the time when you're match fishing, it is hard, but I love the fact that we've gone down to this 075 hook length, because I think that's still an important hook length. You know, okay, with the advent of commercials, people are typically fishing heavier. You know, we've catered for that, haven't we? We've gone right up to the 026 millimetre.
Yeah, which is 11 pounds.
So I think it's fair to say with this type of line, you do refer to the diameter perhaps more than breaking strain.
Us as match anglers do, definitely.
Sure. But obviously it does cross over to pleasure fishing as well. You know, you are getting the absolute best premium line with this version, aren't you?
Yeah, it's the most accurate in terms of its diameter of the lines that I've played around with, that I've compared it to.
Yeah.
And we've also tried to make sure that the breaking strain quoted is, as near as damn it, the maximum, most achievable one. And when I was testing this and when you were testing it, we were measuring this with 5-turn grinners.
Yeah.
Fair to say that if you were to put a half blood knot on it, it might be slightly less.
Yeah.
Palomar might be a bit more. So it depends on the knot, but it's the best breaking strain for its diameter.
Well, I think knots is a really interesting subject, and we'll address that separately, I think, because that's really, really important. But absolutely for me, so in the lighter diameters for my hook lengths, and then rig line for pole fishing. And one thing I will say as well, when I'm fishing with finesse on the float, so when I'm fishing with fine hook lengths like the 07, 08, when I'm river fishing, I will use this as a reel line as well, because I want to balance, I want to get the ultimate finesse. So I want to be able to balance my reel line to the hook length. So say I'm fishing with an 08 hook length, I want to be fishing with an 012 main line. I don't want too much of a difference between my main line.
It's a common mistake lots of anglers make, unfortunately. They might fish with something that's 025 and expect an 010 hook length to work with it.
No,
it doesn't.
No, you've got to use balanced tackle, and I absolutely love using this as a real line, as I say, when I'm fishing finesse and I'm fishing with lighter gear. It's not going to be as robust as our float line, that's for sure.
No.
But where I want to fish with more finesse, it's definitely...
It's very soft.
Absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
It makes perfect hook lengths, and the fact that you can actually buy it in 100-metre spools as well.
Yeah.
When you're making up pole rigs, that's the most economical way to buy it.
And even 300 as well.
Oh.
So, you know, you've got, in those key diameters where you're going to be making lots of rigs, tying lots of hook lengths, you're getting tremendous value for money as well.
If you think about it, that's 100 3-metre pole rigs, which is a lot of rigs.
It is, yeah. Absolutely brilliant. So that's our premium mono. The edge tackle fluorocarbon. Now Richard, this is 100% pure, isn't it?
This is a Japanese fluorocarbon.
Yeah. So in comparison to some fluorocarbons on the market, they're coated, aren't they? They're not pure.
Yeah, you can get some which are just a nylon coated with fluorocarbon, and it's a completely different line.
Yeah. So for me, in my fishing, fluorocarbon in the last sort of 10, 15 years, I actually think it's transformed my fishing.
I quite agree.
Yeah.
I've only ever used it for hook lengths for years.
Yeah. I use it for a lot of my hook lengths when I'm pole fishing. I think for me a key factor is the fact that it's less visible to the fish.
It's almost invisible.
Yeah.
Yeah, the refractive index is so close to water.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I mean, it gives me confidence. It obviously gives you confidence.
Yeah, definitely. When the rivers or the lakes are very low and clear, I'll pretty much always fish with fluorocarbon. In fact, this year I was using the finest one, the 07, when I won the Evesham Festival, and that was pole fishing. I actually caught a chub that was nudging £3, and I managed to get it out on 07, and I'm really convinced that it makes a big difference. I really think it adds, you know, weight to your catch, gets you bites when you wouldn't get bites.
I saw that video. I wondered why you were playing that chub so carefully.
It was a bit hairy, but it just proves, I think, how good it is. You know, even though it's very fine, it's very strong. And I also find fluorocarbon to be more robust.
It's a harder line because fluorocarbon is denser than nylon. It's about 50% denser.
Yeah.
That's why it sinks so fast as well.
So it's maybe not as supple. That's a fair point.
Bit stiffer.
It is a bit stiffer, which can be an advantage.
Less spin-ups.
I love it in the higher diameters when I'm feeder fishing as well, because I do find that it doesn't spin up as much, and it also helps the hook length and leader turn over. So it really does improve presentation, I think, when I'm feeder fishing as well.
Less wind knots.
Yeah. So the range itself, they're all on 50-metre spools, aren't they?
Yes.
And they're sort of all designed nicely to fit into your tray or your tackle box. We've got from 0.7 millimetre all the way up to 0.30.
Yeah.
So we're really covering all the bases. So we're going from the match sort of pole fishing, on very finesse style fishing on rivers, lakes, to the commercials, and then up to perhaps even where you're fishing hook lengths for barbel.
Well, like here.
Yeah, for me, most of the time when I'm barbel fishing now, particularly when the rivers are low and clear, I'll use a fluorocarbon hook length. I think it's, again, like what I was talking about with the pole, I'm convinced that I'll get more bites, and I've also got the strength and the reliability to land the fish as well. So.
I'm of the same opinion. Like I say, I've not used anything other than fluorocarbon hook lengths probably for a decade now.
Yeah. So for me, that's an absolutely awesome addition to the range, and one that has already brought me some great success in my match fishing and pleasure fishing for barbel as well.
You can afford to buy some more.
The Edge Tackle Specimen Mono. So Richard, again, says what it is on the tin. This is a line that we've designed predominantly for specimen fishing. For me, I've been using this for all my heavy feeder work, particularly the 8 and 10 pound version, when I've been fishing the feeder on rivers like the Wye and the Trent, casting heavy feeders, targeting bigger fish like chub and barbel. I found it to be really, really robust and reliable. Tell us a bit more about the line and how you developed it.
Well, the Specimen Mono is not the same as the other lines. It's not one of the others in another colour. It's deliberately different. It's tougher, it's harder than all of the others. It's much more abrasion resistant.
Yeah.
And it's also got the actual same coating on this line that we put onto the sinking mono, because again, primarily this is going to be for bottom work, so you want it to cut under the surface and sink well.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mentioned about my feeder fishing. I've also been using it on my 1.5 pound specimen rod, predominantly in the 10 pound version. I found it to be, as you say, very, very robust and reliable, but still, it's still a nice line to fish with. It's not too wiry, you know, it doesn't come off in coils off the spool.
That's helped by putting it on a big diameter spool.
Yeah, and yeah, I can't really fault it. One other thing I would say is I've used the 6 and 8 pound versions for my hook lengths when I'm barbel fishing when the river's up. So, you know, I use the fluorocarbon when the rivers are lower and clearer, but I like to use the 6 and 8 pound for my hook lengths when the river's up and coloured. Again, I'm just so confident. It's so reliable and strong. You know, a lot of the times when you're catching barbel in a match or when you're pleasure fishing, you know, the line can be nicked, it can be caught on a rock as you're fighting the fish, and this is not going to give up, and it's proved itself time and time again, so I'm very, very confident with this line. The Edge Tackle Sinking Mono. Again, does what it says on the tin. This is designed specifically for use when you want the line to sink. So for when you're ledgering, feeder fishing, or float fishing when you want to cut the line under the surface. And we've got 5 different versions available, from 4 up to 10 pound, in the 2 options of 100 metre or 300 metre spools. So tell us a bit about your thinking on these lines, Richard.
Well, the first thing is, sinking mono is not the same as float mono. It is actually a different line. Sinking mono has less stretch than float mono, which is quite good when you're trying to spot bites on the tip. It's slightly harder, it's slightly denser. For that means that it's a little bit more durable, but also it's a different colour, and we've deliberately done that so that with this and this, you can tell at a glance which is which. You know which has got the float line on, you know which has got the sinking line on. It's not going to be a problem. The other thing about this line is, despite the fact that it's slightly harder, slightly denser than the float, it's still soft and it's still...
I was going to say, because I wanted to emphasise that. Again, I've been using this sinking mono on my reels now for over a year, and I found it to be very, very hard wearing, very robust, but also lovely and supple. So it's not like some of the feeder lines that you get that are quite stiff and wiry. Yeah. So it's a beautiful line to fish with, and I think that's also important when you're thinking about distance.
Absolutely.
Because obviously if you're fishing at longer range, a more supple line is going to come off the spool easier with reduced friction, and you're going to be able to cast a bit further easier. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I think you've really hit the nail on the head there with that line. So I've been using this for all my feeder fishing on both rivers and commercials. So the 4 pound line is my kind of go-to line when I'm fishing, feeder fishing, ledgering on rivers like the Avon. Moving up to the 6 and 8 pound line, even 10 pound line when I'm fishing on big rivers like the Wye and the Trent, targeting barbel. and also on commercials. So for method feeder work, again, the 4 pound for me is my go-to line, and I will use slightly heavier if I'm targeting bigger carp on perhaps casting bigger distances. So for me, Richard, it's an absolutely fantastic range of sinking mono.
Good thing about this is its surface coating and its treatment is completely different to float mono.
Yeah.
So whereas the float mono is treated so it holds up in the surface,
Yeah.
this is the opposite.
Yeah.
This is actually treated so it cuts under the surface pretty much straight away and sinks,
Yeah.
which is what you want it to do.
Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. So that's a fantastic addition to the range, and one that I know is going to prove to be really popular.